Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna do a full chapter-by-chapter summary of the book A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Feyre is hunting in a labyrinth of snow and ice, farther from home than usual due to hunger. She notes that animals might be moving north into Prythian, the fairy lands. She sets up a vantage point in brambles overlooking a clearing and a small brook. A small doe appears, offering enough food and supplies for her family. As Feyre takes aim, a wolf of unnatural stealth and enormous size, pony-sized, appears, aiming for the doe. Feyre decides to kill the wolf instead, fearing it might be a fairy. She draws her ash arrow, armed with iron, known to make immortal healing magic falter. The wolf attacks the doe. Feyre fires the ash arrow, striking the wolf's side and then a second arrow into its eye. The wolf dies. Feyre skins the wolf for its pelt and takes the doe carcass, leaving the forest at sunset. Chapter 2. Feyre arrives at her dilapidated cottage at sunset, bringing the deer and wolf pelt. Her sisters, Ellen and Nesta, and her father are inside. Ellen immediately asks how long it will take Feyre to clean the doe. Feyre's father praises her luck, while Nesta makes a dismissive noise. Feyre plans to eat half the meat and sell the remaining meat and hides at market the next day. She notices her father's ruined leg, injured by predators years ago. Her father, seeing the large wolf pelt, demands to know where she got it, worrying about the risk. Nesta insults Feyre's appearance and lack of refinement. Feyre asks Nesta to chop the few remaining logs for wood, but Nesta refuses, citing splinters. Feyre later insists Nesta chop wood at dawn or eat cold breakfast. Feyre reflects on her vow to her deceased mother to look after her family. Feyre and her family eat roasted venison that night. Chapter 3. Feyre, Nesta, and Ellen travel to the market in the grim, winter village. Feyre avoids an acolyte of the Children of the Blessed, who claims a friend became a high fae's bride after going to the Prythian border as an offering. Feyre meets a large female mercenary who accepts coin only. Feyre shows her the doe and wolf hides. The mercenary examines the hides and names her price. The mercenary warns Feyre against going too far into the woods, citing stories of dangerous fairies slipping through the wall. She tells Feyre about the war, the treaty, and how the high fae took the northern lands. The mercenary mentions an old nobleman who fled south after hearing reports of a Martax pack tearing apart a village. Feyre's sisters reveal another mercenary had robbed them recently. Feyre sees Isaac Hale, her former lover. Nesta suggests Feyre and Isaac take precautions regarding their relationship. Feyre gives her 20-mark copper to Ellen. While gathered by the fire later, they are interrupted by a deafening roar as a giant, growling, feline/wolfish beast bursts into the cottage. Chapter 4. The enormous beast, which Feyre recognizes as a fairy due to the useless wards, bellows the word murderers. Feyre hides her family behind her. Her father babbles pleas and Nesta screams. Feyre throws her hunting knife, but the fairy creature easily deflects it. The beast demands to know who killed the wolf. Feyre asks the fairy what payment they can offer in exchange, mentioning the treaty. The fairy responds that the treaty demands a life for unprovoked attacks on fairykind. Feyre confesses to killing the wolf. The fairy confirms Feyre must pay the debt. Feyre chooses to live rather than die, agreeing to cross the wall and live out her remaining days in Prythian. The fairy confirms he has lands and will grant her permission to live there. Feyre realizes he mentioned the loophole because he assumed humans have a low opinion of fairies. Feyre's father attempts to pay gold. The fairy snaps Feyre's ash arrow. Feyre instructs her father about the remaining venison, money, and future hunting locations. She tells Nesta not to marry Tomas Mandre. Feyre's father tells her not to return if she ever escapes. Feyre follows the beast into the woods. Chapter 5. Feyre and the beast begin riding north toward Prythian. The beast moves with a white mare, almost the same size as him. Feyre realizes she murdered a fairy. She understands that the treaty prohibits enslavement of humans, but worries about how she will live on his lands. Feyre confirms that Prythian is ruled by 7 High Lords. She plans to stay awake to kill the beast or disable him long enough to flee once they make camp. Feyre asks the beast his name, but he refuses to answer. The beast uses magic to drug Feyre with a charged, metallic tang, inducing exhaustion. Feyre wakes to realize she has been held in an enchanted sleep for 2 days. The beast passes through an invisible gate, bringing Feyre into Prythian, where the land is green and the estate is veiled in roses and ivy. Chapter 6. Feyre arrives at the sprawling estate, realizing that the perpetual spring and color are due to magic. The high fae beast, now in his golden, masked high fae form, enters the grand doors. Feyre realizes he kept her unconscious, so she wouldn't know the way back to the wall. Her white mare stops at the stairs. Feyre tries to escape on foot, but she is weak from hunger and exhaustion. She resolves to eat first, then run. Inside, she finds a dining room laden with familiar, human-friendly food. She refuses to eat, recalling the rule never to eat fairy food lest she become enslaved. The beast transforms into a golden-haired, masked man, a high fae. He is joined by a second fairy, Lucien, who wears a fox mask and has a gold orb replacing his missing eye. Lucien confirms Feyre killed his friend, Andres, with an ash arrow. Tamlin states the treaty's magic brought him to her doorstep. Tamlin reveals Feyre's name. Lucien and Tamlin discuss a potential other way for Tamlin, but he refuses, stating Feyre must stay. Tamlin dismisses Feyre to her room with the servant Alice. Chapter 7. Feyre returns to the dining room for supper, refusing to eat the food. Tamlin attempts to feed her, forcing her to sit down. Lucien names Tamlin, identifying him as a mortal. Feyre asks Tamlin what he plans to do with her. Tamlin states he is high fae nobility. Feyre begs Tamlin to let her go, revealing her family is starving. Tamlin reveals he fulfilled his promise by restoring her family's fortune and ensuring they are cared for and safe. Feyre learns fairies cannot lie, but can withhold information. Tamlin warns that if Feyre crosses the wall, her family will no longer be cared for. Lucien questions why Feyre finds their company unpleasant, showcasing typical fairy vanity. Tamlin explains he invited her to live there because he kills too often and she is insignificant enough not to cause trouble. Feyre retires to her room. The next morning, Alice warns Feyre that the house is safe, but the grounds are not. Chapter 8. Feyre pretends to wander the gardens, mentally mapping hiding places and seeking an armory. She considers approaching Lucien to plead her case for return. At dinner, Feyre notices Lucien's conversation confirms his eye allows him to see. Lucien taunts Feyre about contemplating killing him. Tamlin reveals he knew Feyre hunted due to her father's hands and her instructions regarding pelts. Lucien asks Feyre's age, and she says 19. Tamlin asks about her mother's death, and Feyre replies typhus, when she was 8. Tamlin offers to teach her to write. In her room, Feyre packs a satchel with clothes and a small stolen knife. Chapter 9. The next morning, Feyre plans to find Lucien alone to discuss her freedom. Tamlin interrupts her, confirming his morning work was postponed, and offers to take her riding. Feyre declines, wanting to be alone. Tamlin, visibly frustrated, walks away. Feyre goes to the stables, where Lucien is preparing for border patrol. Lucien mentions Tamlin's absence of ash arrows and notes Feyre's quiet demeanor. Feyre rides out with Lucien, noting he came to her rather than her seeming eager. Lucien deduces Feyre came out to beg him to beseech Tamlin to free her. Lucien confirms he would like her gone, but there is no loophole to the treaty's demands. He warns her against roughing it alone in Prythian. Feyre asks about the other High Lord's courts, and Lucien expresses fear of a woman who governs their lands. Lucien reveals Tamlin's shapeshifting involves transforming sentries into animals. Lucien reveals the weaknesses of the surreal, warning her not to seek one out. Lucien and Feyre both sense the presence of the bog, a creature that feeds on acknowledged fear, and Lucien commands Feyre not to react. Chapter 10. Feyre and Lucien ride in the woods when a creeping, leeching cold manifests around them. Feyre cannot see the source, but feels a presence and hears a voice commanding her to look at me. Lucien warns her against reacting. The cold entity departs and Lucien identifies it as the bog, stating it cannot be killed, only ignored. Later, at dinner, Lucien informs Tamlin about the bog's presence. Tamlin, enraged, rises from the table, his claws extending, and stalks out to hunt the creature where they encountered it earlier. Feyre realizes Tamlin is capable of hunting the dangerous entity. Chapter 11. Feyre sees an illusion of her father outside her window, limping toward the open outer gates, and decides to run toward him. As she nears the gates, Tamlin intercepts her, his claws and fangs visible. Tamlin then directs his wrath toward the figure, which shimmers and darts away, revealing itself as a puka, a fairy that uses illusions of desires to lure victims. Tamlin confirms he glamored Feyre's family's memories, making them believe she is safe with a wealthy aunt. Tamlin tells Feyre that his care for her family will cease if she attempts to escape Prythian. Chapter 12. Feyre maps the manor's layout in the dark for possible escape routes. Tamlin enters the hall in his beast form, limping and trailing blood, confirming he has killed the bog. Feyre cleans and bandages his cuts in the infirmary. The next morning, Feyre overhears Tamlin and Lucien arguing. Lucien questions why Tamlin is resigned to the current situation, calling Amarantha the source of the blight and urging action. Tamlin responds that his father killed Tamlin's father and brothers, and he refuses to follow their tyrannical path. Chapter 13. Tamlin leads Feyre to his study, a massive room filled with books. Feyre struggles with her inability to read and secretly attempts to copy words. She discovers a mural depicting Prythian's history, identifying the 7 courts: spring, summer, autumn, winter, dawn, day, and the lethal, dark night court. Tamlin offers to help her write to her family, noting her illiteracy. Feyre rejects his help, stating she doesn't trust him. Later, Feyre seeks out Lucien and tricks him into explaining how to capture a surreal, a fairy that answers questions when snared. Lucien gives her specific instructions and warns her to escape to running water. Chapter 14. Feyre, armed with a bow, quiver, knives, and a dead chicken, walks into the western woods alone. She finds a grove of birch trees near a stream and sets a snare trap. A frail, veiled fairy creature, the surreal, is caught. The surreal confirms Tamlin is a High Lord of the Spring Court. The surreal states Feyre must remain in Prythian and reveals that the King of Hybern is planning an attack on the mortal world. The surreal warns that Naga fairies made of shadow are approaching and begs Feyre to free it immediately. Chapter 15. For Naga, scaled creatures with talons emerge from the woods. Feyre screams to alert Lucien and fires an arrow, breaking the surreal's tether, which allows the creature to flee. Feyre fires a second arrow, hitting one Naga, and flees toward the stream. The remaining Naga pursue her, ignoring the running water. As the Naga are about to attack, Tamlin appears in his golden, armored beast form, roaring. Tamlin kills the 3 remaining Naga with his claws, disemboweling the last one. Tamlin shifts back and asks Feyre what she was doing outside the manor. She thanks him for saving her life. Chapter 16. Alice warns Feyre that asking questions about war or the King of Hybern will bring bad luck. At dinner, Tamlin reveals that iron is harmless to fairies and only ash would impede their healing magic. Feyre admits she snared the surreal but was interrupted. Tamlin, holding her crumpled list of words, offers to teach her to read, which she refuses. Tamlin confirms he glamored her family's memories to protect them, making them believe she is safe and wealthy, thereby fulfilling her vow to her mother. He offers to provide her with paints, a workspace, and an art gallery tour. Chapter 17. Feyre is awakened and finds Tamlin and Lucien tending to a wounded summer court fairy who was dumped over the border. His wings were ripped off. Lucien vomits and flees the room. Tamlin, unable to heal major damage, watches as the fairy dies. Feyre holds the dead fairy's hand, comforting him. Tamlin leads Feyre away, confirming he must bury the body alone. Tamlin asks why Feyre cared for the stranger. She replies she didn't want him to die alone and expresses profound regret for killing Andres. Chapter 18. Tamlin takes Feyre riding after his meeting is postponed. He leads her to a clearing with a sparkling silver pool, where he disrobes and invites her to swim. Tamlin reveals Lucien is the estranged youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court. His father executed Lucien's lover, and Tamlin rescued Lucien after he was nearly killed by his brothers. Feyre recounts her family's financial ruin and how she started hunting at 14. Lucien privately confirms that Tamlin revealed Feyre's shot on Andres was aimed to save the surreal, not herself, indicating that Tamlin trusts her loyalty. Chapter 19. Tamlin shows Feyre a previously closed-off art gallery filled with various types of artwork, which she admires for hours. Alice leads Feyre to an empty room equipped with all the necessary painting supplies provided by Tamlin. Feyre realizes the mortal world has moved on without her and feels shame for her new peaceful life. Tamlin tells her about his family, revealing his father and brothers were slave owners, leading to his current shame. Tamlin warns Feyre that the Great Rite Calanmai is approaching, where he will be transformed into the hunter. He orders her to stay in the house as fairies from other territories will be roaming. Chapter 20. Feyre sketches a gray, skeletally thin creature with bat ears and fangs. Drums and bonfire noise increase outside the manor, signaling the approach of the Great Rite. Tamlin tells Feyre to go to her room, lock her doors, set up a snare, and not come out until morning, as he must partake in the rite. Tamlin runs into the garden. Feyre disobeys, leaves the manor, and rides her white mare toward the fires atop the foothills. Hundreds of masked Fae are gathered around a bonfire and lining a path toward a flower-adorned cave mouth, swaying to the drums. 3 non-masked fairies grab Feyre, restraining her hands and herding her toward the darkness, ignoring her shouts. She stumbles, and a massive pair of hands catches her and gently sets her upright. Chapter 21. Feyre is saved by a strikingly handsome, black-haired high-fae male with violet eyes. He smiles predatorily and releases her, confirming he is not part of the Spring Court, but is free to roam during Calanmai because all the monsters have been let out of their cages. Feyre returns to the Hollow, where Lucien immediately confronts her, yelling about her folly for being there during the Great Rite. Lucien throws Feyre over his shoulder and runs until they reach the halls of the manor. Lucien explains that the Great Rite regenerates magic, turning Tamlin into the hunter to find the maiden. Lucien warns that if Tamlin, the hunter, had smelled her, he would have claimed her, but it wouldn't have been Tamlin. Lucien leaves to return before Tamlin reaches the cave. Tamlin, wearing war paint and a laurel crown, later confronts Feyre. He grabs her wrists, pins her against the wall, expressing frustration that he smelled her and searched for her. Feyre strikes his face, and he growls before leaving. Chapter 22. Feyre wakes up with a large bruise where Tamlin bit her neck on Fire Night. She makes herself a bath. At lunch, Lucien ribs Feyre about the previous night. Feyre calls Tamlin a fairy pig, and Lucien laughs. Lucien vanishes, leaving Feyre alone with Tamlin. Tamlin uses magic to light up her painting room. Feyre shows him her painting of the Starlight Pool. Tamlin views other paintings: a bleak snow forest, her former life, her cottage at night, a scene of Isaac Hale, and a violent scene of men attacking her father's leg. Tamlin asks for the painting of the snow-veiled woods. He admits he kept her for selfish reasons, wanting her safe and close. Feyre does not lock her door that night. Chapter 23. Feyre and Tamlin are relaxing in a forest spot, discussing how Tamlin could unlock her senses. Tamlin offers to let her see, hear, and smell his world. She agrees, and he fulfills the bargain with a kiss. Feyre experiences vivid, rich sensations: birdsong as a symphony, trees shimmering with light, and the smell of magic as jasmine. She asks what he looks like under his mask, and he grins, describing his features. Feyre asks about his kissing bargain, and he kisses her again, before darkness consumes her. Chapter 24. Feyre is awakened in her bed by a bark-skinned woman, realizing Tamlin carried her home. She notices her sight has changed, and the servant is revealed to be a puka. Feyre now sees that the previous glamours are gone, and the hallways are bustling with various unmasked fairies. Lucien appears. Feyre asks Tamlin if she would see the adder now, and he confirms she would see creatures in their true, often unpleasant, forms. He warns her to pretend she doesn't see aggressive creatures to avoid the need for him to punish them. The next morning, Feyre discovers a severed, bloody high-fae head spiked onto a fountain statue in the garden. Tamlin and Lucien immediately join her. Lucien identifies a sigil, a mountain with 3 stars, behind the ear of the dead fairy. Tamlin identifies the killer as the Night Court, calling the act a joke and a message that they are circling the Spring Court. Tamlin assures Feyre she is safe and sends Lucien to dispose of the head. Chapter 25. Tamlin is called away to the borders after the discovery of the head. He sends Lucien to check on Feyre. The next day, Feyre awakens to find the garden decorated for summer solstice celebrations. Alice dresses Feyre in a cornflower blue gown. Tamlin offers his arm, and they walk out to the plateau with Lucien. Tamlin explains solstice is a time of neutrality and enjoyment. Feyre eats alone. Lucien warns her against drinking the golden sparkling wine. She ignores him and drinks it anyway. The wine fills her with intense joy. Tamlin later leads her to a meadow where shimmering spirits waltz and sing until dawn. Tamlin holds her close, and they kiss as the sun rises, witnessing the golden light. Chapter 26. Lucien joins Tamlin and Feyre for breakfast. Lucien reveals information from the Winter Court. The blight killed 24 Winter Court younglings, and it is spreading south. Tamlin snarls, unsheathing his claws, as the house falls silent. Lucien draws his sword and pushes Feyre to the window. Rhysand appears, stating he came to check on Tamlin and confirm he received the head. Rhysand questions why Tamlin is not fighting Amarantha, whom Rhysand serves. Lucien calls Rhysand Amarantha's whore, and Rhysand physically assaults Lucien. Rhysand then uses his power to mentally seize control of Feyre, probing her mind and revealing her private desires about Tamlin to shame her. Rhysand confirms Amarantha will enjoy breaking Feyre. Tamlin begs Rhys not to tell Amarantha about Feyre. Rhysand forces Tamlin to grovel, then vanishes, warning them he looks forward to seeing them under the mountain. Chapter 27. Tamlin, enraged, orders Feyre and Lucien out of the dining room. Later, Tamlin comes to Feyre's room and tells her he is sending her home to save her from Amarantha. He reveals he is taking on her life debt for Andros's death. He cannot protect her from Amarantha or the trouble in Prythian. Feyre argues, wanting to stay and help. Tamlin tells her Amarantha will hunt her down and kill her. He confesses his worry. They kiss passionately, and Feyre pulls him onto the bed, wanting to savor their last night. She removes her nightgown. Tamlin murmurs that he loves her. He confirms she must leave at dawn. Chapter 28. Alice dresses Feyre in impractical wealthy mortal clothes. Feyre says goodbye to Alice. Lucien confronts Tamlin, asking why he won't give Feyre a few more days, but Tamlin ignores him. Feyre rides away in a gilded carriage with Tamlin. She is magically put to sleep as they pass through the woods. She wakes up at a large chateau and is greeted by human servants, including her sisters, Ellen and Nesta. Ellen explains that a stranger approached their father, enabling him to successfully invest money, and their lost ships were recovered, restoring their fortune. Tamlin provided this restoration. Feyre's father weeps with joy and orders a ball in her honor. Chapter 29. Feyre fabricates stories about her wealthy Aunt Ripley. Her father, clear-eyed and vibrant, counts the enormous jewels that came in Feyre's trunks. Ellen mentions Nesta quit the social season and has been quiet. Ellen reveals Nesta was gone for a week, claiming her carriage broke down while trying to visit Feyre. Feyre later rides to their old cottage, which is small and dark. She returns to the new manor and begins digging a garden plot. Nesta confronts Feyre at the manor, tossing a piece of painted foxglove from their old table at her feet. Nesta reveals the fairy glamour did not work on her due to her iron will. Nesta admits she hired a mercenary to take her to the Prythian wall shortly after Feyre left, but couldn't cross. Nesta orders Feyre to explain everything that happened, and Feyre complies. Chapter 30. Feyre visits the village's poor neighborhood to distribute gifts of silver and gold, politely declining conversation with the curious villagers. She encounters her former lover, Isaac Hale, now married, and smiles at them, wishing them well. Returning to her father's manor, Feyre begins digging a new garden plot. Nesta confronts Feyre, showing her a piece of painted wood foxglove from the old cottage table, which she retrieved. Nesta reveals the fairy glamour did not work on her due to her iron will. Nesta admits she hired a mercenary to take her to the Prythian wall shortly after Feyre left, but she could not cross. Nesta orders Feyre to explain everything that happened, and Feyre complies. Chapter 31. Feyre attends the ball held in her honor, where she avoids guests and feels guilty over her failure to help Tamlin. The next day, Feyre overhears her father discussing buying the Better land and learns that the Better family had died when their house burned down. Feyre realizes this attack was intended for her family, confirming the dangerous threat posed by fairies. Feyre instructs Nesta to keep her story a secret and to hire guards to watch the wall. She orders Nesta to take the family far south by ship immediately if any danger or sign of a breach occurs. Feyre declares she must try to help Tamlin. Feyre leaves the manor on horseback, riding north toward the wall. Chapter 32. Feyre arrives at the Spring Court estate and finds the iron gates wrenched open and the manor doors broken. The house interior is a complete wreck, with tapestries shredded, the marble banister fractured, and blood splattered everywhere. Feyre notes the absence of bodies, but identifies large footprints leading from the dining room toward the garden, suggesting Tamlin and Lucien left without a protracted fight. Feyre hides as she hears movement and is startled when Alice appears, disheveled and dirty. Alice confirms that Tamlin and Lucien are both alive, but she is limping slightly and warns Feyre she should not be there. Alice pulls Feyre into the kitchen, which has been destroyed by fire and reduced to scorched stone. Chapter 33. Alice reveals Amarantha is the High Queen of Prythian and the true source of the Blight, having stolen the High Lord's powers and trapped them under the mountain 49 years ago. Amarantha cursed Tamlin. He needed a human girl full of hatred to kill his sentinel, then convince her to love him before 49 years passed, or remain Amarantha's slave. Tamlin, unable to break the curse, was seized by Amarantha 3 days after Feyre left. Feyre demands Alice show her the entrance to the mountain. Alice leads Feyre to a slender cave that acts as an ancient shortcut to the sacred mountain. Alice gives Feyre rules for survival, warning her against making deals or trusting anyone, and urging her to listen for the final, unspoken part of the curse. Feyre enters the cave, squeezes through a fissure, and is immediately grabbed by the Adder Dash. Chapter 34. The Adder drags Feyre into Amarantha's colossal throne room, where Tamlin stands silent and impassive next to the Queen Dash. Amarantha gloats that Tamlin let an innocent human girl, Claire, be tortured and killed to protect Feyre. Amarantha forces Feyre to look at Claire's mangled corpse, which is nailed to the wall Dash. Feyre affirms she still claims Tamlin. Amarantha offers a bargain. Feyre must complete 3 tasks to prove her loyalty and love, in exchange for breaking Tamlin's curse and freeing his court. Feyre secures the promise of eternal freedom if she succeeds. Amarantha adds that Feyre can choose to solve a riddle at any time for instantaneous freedom, but failure means immediate death. Feyre agrees. Amarantha then strikes Feyre, causing her to bleed and lose consciousness. Chapter 35. Feyre wakes up alone in a cold, damp dungeon cell with a broken nose and bruised face Dash. Lucien arrives and confirms he knows the full truth about the curse. Lucien warns Feyre she should not have returned. He magically sets her broken nose, causing her to faint momentarily, then heals the injury partially, leaving bruises. Lucien explains that Amarantha has summoned all High Lords to the mountain and confirms Jorian's eye in the ring is a cursed trophy Dash. Lucien leaves suddenly as the guards approach. Feyre is later taken to the throne room, where Amarantha presents her to the court and recites the riddle, which Feyre cannot solve Dash. Rhysand is present, showing boredom and disdain. Feyre is returned to her cell to wait for her trials. Chapter 36. Feyre is brought to a massive, muddy cavern arena filled with a roaring crowd Dash. Amarantha reveals the first task, survive a labyrinth of trenches. The Adder throws Feyre into the pit. Amarantha releases a colossal, sharp-toothed worm, whose lair is filled with bones, to hunt Feyre Dash. Feyre hides, improvises, and snaps large bones across her knee to create sharp spikes. She arranges the spikes in a trap at the pit entrance. Lucien shouts a warning, causing the worm to burst through a wall, nearly catching Feyre. Feyre leaps into the pit, and the frenzied worm follows, fatally impaling itself on the spikes Dash. Feyre emerges covered in mud, holding a bone shard, confirming her victory, while Amarantha looks enraged. Chapter 37. Feyre suffers in her cell from a bleeding, festering wound in her arm inflicted during the first trial. Rhysand appears as a shadow, confirming Feyre is dying from fever and infection. Rhysand offers a bargain. He will heal her in exchange for Feyre spending 2 weeks per month with him at the night court after the trials. He reveals that Tamlin was forced to deliver 20 lashes to Lucien as punishment. Feyre accepts the bargain to survive and free Tamlin. Rhysand heals the wound instantly but applies a permanent, extensive tattoo in dark ink covering her entire left arm, including a feline eye in her palm. Rhysand confirms the intent was to torment Tamlin and then vanishes. Chapter 38. Feyre is forced to complete Amarantha's daily chore, scrubbing a long marble hallway with filthy water, an impossible task that only creates mud Dash. Next, she is locked in Rhysand's bedroom and ordered to separate spilled lentils from ash in the fireplace Dash. Rhysand appears, lounging on the bed. Rhysand uses his magic to clean the fireplace and separate the lentils instantly. He explains that Amarantha's oath forbids him from revealing the curse details, though he confirms his shapeshifting involves wings and talons Dash. Rhysand then uses mind control on the returning guards, ordering them not to touch Feyre or enter her cell. Rhysand sends Feyre back, having completed her task for her Dash. Chapter 39. Feyre is isolated in her cell. Rhysand's shadow servants paint her body with night court symbols and dress her in a revealing gown Dash. Rhysand escorts her to a party. In the throne room, Rhysand reveals his bargain to Tamlin and Amarantha. Feyre owes him 2 weeks per month at the night court for life in exchange for the healing. Rhysand forces Feyre to drink fairy wine, and she awakens violently sick in her cell Dash. Lucien visits and confirms Rhysand made her dance for him. Lucien explains that Tamlin's silence is a strategy to avoid showing Amarantha what torments him most. Rhysand later forces the death of a summer court fairy, whose mind he shattered Dash. Rhysand visits Feyre again, announcing the second trial is tomorrow. Chapter 40. Feyre is brought before Amarantha for her second task, which takes place in a large cavern. Amarantha initiates a practice exercise by sinking the floor, lowering Feyre into a pit. Feyre finds 3 walls of smooth stone and one side that is an iron grate, behind which Lucien is chained. Above them, 2 giant, spiked grates begin slowly descending, threatening to crush both Feyre and Lucien. On the smooth stone wall, a long inscription is carved above 3 stone levers marked 1, 2, and 3, presenting a riddle or puzzle Feyre must solve by pulling the correct lever. Feyre, unable to read the language of the inscription, realizes she must choose one lever before the grate crushes them. Feyre frantically chooses the 3rd lever. The spiked grate stops inches above her head and rises toward the ceiling. Feyre successfully survives the 2nd task. Chapter 41. Feyre endures days of despair in her cell following the 2nd trial. While being escorted by Rhysand's shadow servants, Feyre and her guards hide behind a tapestry to avoid the approaching Adder. Feyre overhears the Adder discuss preparations for the King of Hybern's forces, which she believes confirms the plan to invade the mortal world. The Adder's companion warns that Amarantha risks punishment from the King of Hybern if she fails to aid his war campaign. After the 2 fairies leave, Feyre's escorts resume their work, stating that Rhys will soon know about the trouble. Later, a noise permeates Feyre's cell, and she experiences a vision prompted by music, feeling herself rise through the earth and clouds into a vast sky. Feyre determines that her final trial is 2 days away. Chapter 42. The night before the final task, a party is held in the throne room. Feyre seeks out Tamlin, and they meet secretly in a dim passageway behind a tapestry. They embrace and kiss passionately. Rhysand, who can walk through walls, interrupts their embrace and threatens to have Lucien punished, lose his remaining eye, if Tamlin doesn't cease. Tamlin complies with Rhysand's order, dresses himself, whispers "I love you" to Feyre and leaves. Rhysand then kisses Feyre to erase the taste of Tamlin from her mouth. Amarantha and her court find Feyre, observing the smudged paint on her body, believing Rhysand has seduced her. Rhysand visits Feyre's cell, revealing he is Amarantha's forced lover and High Lord of the Night Court. He explains that he uses Feyre to torment Tamlin, and that his own father killed Tamlin's father and brothers, which is why Amarantha targets him. Chapter 43. Feyre arrives at the throne room for the final task, where onlookers show solemn respect. Amarantha commands Feyre to stab 3 innocent fairies in the heart with ash daggers. Feyre realizes this is the price for Prythian's freedom and stabs the 1st fairy youth and the 2nd fairy woman, killing them both. Amarantha then reveals the final victim is Tamlin, challenging Feyre to kill him and break the curse or forfeit her life. Feyre recalls previous overheard conversations about Tamlin having a heart of stone and realizes his heart cannot be pierced by a blade. She realizes the curse required her to perform the impossible task of loving a fairy and then killing an innocent, but that Tamlin's death is the final, unexpected element of the curse. Feyre tells Tamlin she loves him and stabs him in the chest with the ash dagger. Chapter 44. Tamlin cries out as the dagger pierces his flesh, causing blood to rush out. Amarantha reneges on the bargain, stating that Feyre failed to specify when they would be freed. Amarantha proceeds to torture Feyre, brutally crushing her bones. Rhysand draws the bloody ash dagger and launches himself at Amarantha, but she blasts him back with white light. Rhysand, revealing talons, attempts a 2nd attack, but is halted by an invisible wall Amarantha creates. Tamlin, healing slowly, begs Amarantha to stop, apologizing for insulting her sister years ago. Feyre, using her final breaths, correctly names the answer to the riddle, love. Feyre's spine snaps and she dies. Tamlin immediately shifts into his beast form, encased in golden light, and launches himself at Amarantha. He shoves her against the wall, catches a thrown sword, and drives it through her head, then rips out her throat with his jaws, killing her. Chapter 45. Through Rhysand's eyes, Feyre witnesses her own death, Lucien removing his mask, and Tamlin's transformation into his powerful beast form. Tamlin, now free of the curse, furiously attacks Amarantha, gripping her by the neck and shoving her against the stone wall. As fairies rush to aid the queen, other high fae and fairies remove their masks and attack the guards and the adder. Tamlin drives a sword through Amarantha's head and rips out her throat with his jaws, killing her. Tamlin shifts back and collapses, cradling Feyre's broken body while sobbing. The High Lords of Prythian approach Feyre's body one by one, giving her a seed or a drop of light. Rhysand gives his light, stating it makes them even. Tamlin places his hand, glowing with a strange bud of light, on Feyre's heart, whispers "I love you," and kisses her. Chapter 46. Feyre awakens in a warm darkness, swimming toward the light, and surfaces to life, now immortal. Amarantha's impaled corpse is visible on the wall, confirming the court's freedom. Chaos erupts as wicked fairies flee, while Spring Court members celebrate and thank Tamlin. Tamlin holds tense meetings with allied High Lords and sentries. Tamlin and Feyre find a quiet bedroom where they embrace. Tamlin finds the Night Court tattoo on Feyre's arm and promises to find a way to break the bargain. Feyre later finds Rhys-san on a mountain balcony, shielding her from the sun. Rhys-san reveals he used his magic by contributing his light because he didn't want Feyre to fight or die alone. Tamlin and Feyre emerge onto the Spring Court lands and return to the rose-covered manor. And that's how the book ends. Thanks for listening. If there's a book you'd like me to cover next, let me know in the comments. I love hearing your suggestions. Have you read this one? If you have, please tell me what you thought about it in the comments down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or was it just okay? If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe for more full book summaries. See you in the next one.